Hello, hello. Hello, welcome in. Welcome in. We're just waiting for everything to get started, more people to come in. If you're watching the recording, welcome. So excited to be here today. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see. As we're all coming in here, go ahead and start utilizing the chat. If you have any questions, go ahead and start popping questions into there. I'm just going to start with a little intro for anyone who's watching the recording. So thank you for being here, whether it's live or not. I think it's really cool that we're taking our time to have a conversation, make the industry better. If you are not making any of these sessions live, you can always send me an email, hello@marinamars.com, and then I'm happy to either answer those questions in a context with you by providing you resources or inviting you to another Q&A session. These are always available for you. We have a couple people popping in. Looks like we've got Zoom user. Hi, hello. While we are seeing if anybody on the live call has any questions, I did have a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and start talking about those. And of course, if you are in the live call and anything comes of it, just please use the chat feature as much as possible. I will keep my eyes peeled on that. So one question that I received ahead of time had a lot to do with menu design, but very specifically, how do you design menus for multiple people who are coming in from multiple contexts? So what I mean by that is multiple people have different definitions of sobriety. Multiple people have different kind of perceptions of different botanicals. So what can we do to help all the different types of people under the non-alc umbrella still hang out at the same watering hole? This is a really awesome question, and I'm so thankful that it was asked because I think that it's a really, there's some nuance to it that's really easy to execute. It's just about having a conversation so we're all on the same page. So I want to dive in by saying menus don't have to look any specific type of way. And what I mean by that is if you want it to be on a square piece of paper, go ahead and have a square. If you want a rectangle, go for it. You want some crazy book, go for it. You want a PDF ebook download from a QR code, you can do that. I'll be honest with you. I know I should be all cool with the times and technologies and stuff, but QR codes never work on my phone. So I would always recommend that as being a backup side thing. I digress. Point of the story is you can have a square menu. You can have a quad, you can have anything you want. You want it on a hexagon? Sure, let's do it. The whole point of the story is it doesn't matter how. I'm not saying that there has to be one specific template that works for everybody, but having different sections. So no matter which shape your menu is or whatever way the presentation is, you can use two sides of the menu, right? So, and beyond that, if you have obviously a book, then you have multiple sides, right? But let me just talk about the front and back side real quick, because I think that this is this will work for most people and it's the easiest to execute. So oftentimes there are kind of these different camps of people, right? We have people who, well, yes, all the sobriety we talked about, but now we're talking about ordering styles. You have some people who are highly customizable. I want this with this specific add-on and minus this specific thing, and I have this allergy, so I want it to be so specific. Then you have the other boat of people who are I don't want you to ask me more than one or two questions, and I'm not going to customize shit. I just want to order a drink off the menu. So you've got these two camps. And of course, you have people in between, but two main camps. There are two sides to a piece of paper, right? So this is my favorite first way to differentiate side one from side two. Side one is more of a build your own, to the roots, what are the items that you have on your menu? Like, I have kava straight up traditional shells. I have kratom straight up traditional tea. I have coffee blank. Like, these are the base botanicals. These are the base ingredients, like flavors or mixers or add-ons, like however you want to call that. And then the third category of like true add-ons, like if you have additional tinctures, like functional things, right? So it teaches people that like functional mixology, you can build your own experience in this postmodern world where we like to identify by whatever label. You can make your own drink and do the thing, right? But then there's the people like me who I just look, this is my day job, right? Like this is what I do in my life. So when I am going and enjoying a drink at a kava bar, usually I play dumb, I'll be honest with you, because it's just more fun that way to see what people know. But I don't want to make decisions. I want you to make me a cute, precious drinky. I want to know that you, as the service provider, as the expert, you are providing me an experience. So give me a side of the menu where I want that cosmic blast. I don't know what the hell that means. Like I'll read the description and be like, sounds like a fun experience. But that's like some people watch movies that they're like, they go out and they take themselves to the movies and watch a movie they've never seen. Some people like to go and they're foodies and they go to restaurants. There's people like me who just like to go and just like try a weird random drink on the menu and see how it goes. So, especially when you're dealing with new people in the industry too, who are new to a non-alc space, who are new to this whole concept of functional mixology, you don't want them to think too much because they're gonna feel overwhelmed. They're gonna need a drink to drink in order to like figure out what they need to order, right? Like they're like, for analysis, you don't want to give them too much anxiety. So again, two sides of the menu. Another thing I want to mention here is so two sides of the menu help for the type of ordering styles, but how does this help for sobriety styles, right? Well, that's where within on each side of the menu, you can have these like kind of subgenres, right? Where you're like, choose your intention. Like, how do all of these botanicals make you feel? You can create an emoji system, a symbol system that goes throughout your entire menu on both sides. So maybe there's like a lightning bolt for energy, or, maybe if your vibe of your bar is more of like outdoor athletic, maybe there's like someone on a bicycle, like maybe that you use that emoji. Depending on your brand, choose your own emojis, right? Point of the story is you don't want to make it too hieroglyphic cryptic. We just knew we need to be able to understand what it means, but that helps us understand, okay, this drink has an effect versus if we get to like a white tea on the menu, and I don't mean white kratom, I mean like white tea derived from green tea that has like minimal caffeine. It's just like typically a more herbal blend added to that white tea, where they're like white tea is really good for example, like pregnant women, right? Pregnant women don't want to consume anything. Gosh, well, want and needs are different things, right? But point of the story is pregnant women can't consume a lot of things. They have to be like ultra sober in many spaces. So because of that, we're going to have, you're going to want things on the menu that are like, yo, there's nothing here. This is not nothing, but like as in there's no botanicals with effects that are going to like have high risk, right? That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. So you can have that on both sides of the menu still, even the build your own versus the already made drinks. So that's really cool. The last thing I want to mention here, and then I'll move into the next question because I could honestly lecture about this forever, is what was it? Hold on. It'll come right back to me. Oh, the two-sided menu part, right? So you can have rules on one side of the menu that don't apply to the other side of the menu. So here's what I mean by that. We already said that the customizable side of the menu is on one side, for example, and the other side is preset, right? Well, on the preset side of the menu, it kind of makes sense sometimes to be like, okay, but you can add kava or kratom to this for $3, $5, $10, whatever. It makes sense to be like, if you want to add one of those like functional add-ons to any of these drinks, you can, but these drinks are already good as is. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have you are having a Kava mocktail and it's already made. Maybe it's like a pina colada one, classic. And you just want to add an additional serving of Kava to it. So it's not that you're changing anything about it. You're just adding this additional serving. That is very typical on that second side of the menu. So you can have a little tiny box on the corner somewhere or in the middle, whatever. Just somewhere you have a box that kind of pops out and it says add to this side of the menu only. And then you have like kava, kratom, CBD, whatever in that. So that's kind of how you can handle creating drinks for different people, for different sobriety and different ordering styles all at the same time. So I don't want you to feel like you have to like segregate your menu and make like, okay, this piece of paper is for the people that like kava and kratom, and this one's for the people that don't like kava and kratom, but they like some things. And then this menu piece of paper is for, I don't know, the kids section. Like, I don't, you can have many menus, but to be honest with you, like unless your brand is to become this like highly intellectually complex thing that requires like a PhD to read all the things, like unless that's your demographic, it might complicate things a bit much. So all of that being said, I have 4 different workshops throughout the entire month of June that's going to like really deep dive into a lot of menu stuff. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Everybody who's in the Q&A, watching the Q&A recordings, all that, you're automatically added to my email list. So you will get that information too, which is so exciting. So that being said, I do have one other question that was pre-submitted, but I'm glad to see you, Abigail, popping in, other people popping in. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and I will go through anything that comes up, of course. And if it turns out your question is like too complex for the chat box and you need to come off mute, feel free to just write that so I can kind of direct you in. But as I'm waiting to see some other questions pop in, I will answer that other one that was submitted beforehand. And the one that was the second question that was submitted beforehand is about like hiring. But it was a very specific question because, you know, hiring is a fun art form in general. And it's one of those things that is you're a forever student of the interview process. I love interviews. And I digress. So the main question was specifically, what's best for hiring in a kava bar environment? Someone who, you know, has background in bartending or baristaing, or does it really matter? Like, is it okay if they've never worked in beverages before, but maybe they have an extensive knowledge of herbalism, but they've never worked a customer service job, right? Like, how do you go about hiring the perfect kava tender? This is one of my favorite questions I think I've ever been asked because it shows to me, first off, that you care, that you really want to make sure that your staff is there, right? But also, I think it's really cool because it shows that we are kind of at this point in the industry where there are people who are excited who maybe want to turn this into their careers. And you, as a business owner or a manager, operator of a kava bar, non-alc lounge space, bottle shop, like you have the ability to take your business in multiple directions, right? You can do a lot of like moonlighting type hiring, moonlighting as in like someone who only gets a job for like a season in life until they're like, oh, I'm moonlighting because I'm an actor, right? So I'm a server at night. I'm moonlighting at this like waiter gig, right? So having moonlighters as kava tenders is like people who are in college or they're just jumping through. Most people who work at Starbucks, for example, are moonlighters and like and there are some people obviously who are career. So how do we differentiate? Like, who are the best people to like kind of spring into this? Like, who are the best people to hire for management positions? Who are the best people to really dive deeply into that kava aspect? So this is kind of one of those questions that, again, I made a 3-part mini course that's going to be next week for building accountable crews, where I talk about hiring, supporting, and then developing a really great staff. But to start answering this question now, I will say this. I don't like I don't even interview people for a kava tender position if they have never worked as a barista or bartender or some sort of service. Like if they didn't work with drinks specifically, I might interview them depending. Like if I have like 10 amazing candidates that all are bartenders and baristas, am I going to interview that 11th that has never even touched drinks? I don't know. It really like they would have to have like a really big background in herbalism, but even then, okay, this is where I want to be so real with you guys. Herbalism can be taught. I don't know if this is about to be an unpopular opinion right now, but here we go. Herbalism can be taught, customer service and being good and fast at it. While that can also be taught, I think that takes way longer. And by longer, I mean this. So when it comes to being good at being behind a bar and anticipating human needs and by human needs I don't mean like, oh, what's the right botanical for you? I mean, is their cup empty? Is there garbage around their chair? Did you clean the dining room or the lounge space? Are there dirty dishes? Does it smell weird in here? Like, are when the drinks are being served, is there a pretty little napkin placed right underneath if you're in a bar? Obviously, if you're a like a mobile unit to go space, it's a little different. But still, you still have that little counter in front. You usually still have a trash can. Is your trash emptied? Like all those things. So when it comes to those finer points of like hospitality, so this conversation is outside of non-alc. This is general hospitality. There are some people who are caretakers who are genuinely really good at anticipating other people's needs. And then there are nerds. And I mean this lovingly because, I studied math. I have many nerd friends and I am nerd myself in certain contexts, but not this one. In this one, I like to think I'm quite savvy because it to me, there's a dance that comes to being able to serve in the hospitality space. And the feedback that I often hear from people, like business owners who just hire their friends who've never had experience, it's okay, we'll learn together. They learn the hard way that they're paying for their friend's education essentially with their business. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying like it's going to be literally additional years before you see profit if you do that. So, all that being said, this is why I always hire people who already understand how hospitality works because I have the belief genuinely that I can teach anybody the herbalism that they need. I can teach them the functional mixology they need. And side note, this is turning into like so many things I'm telling you about. I have so many offers coming out soon. I'm building a Kava Tender 101 course for business owners to buy that they can just literally put their staff in front of a TV or send them a link and then their staff can watch this course. So I'm literally making a course for kava tenders that the business owners buy for their kava tenders, or if there's just a kava tender out there that wants to learn themselves. So point of that story is that's how confident I am that you can learn that in a container. You can learn that in a month, what you need to learn in order to start serving. And then, of course, herbalism is a lifelong practice. I'm constantly learning about new things, but I wouldn't have known as much about kava and kratom. Like any nerd out there who's doing all the book search, research in the books on kava and kratom, they don't know anything about kava and kratom compared to the people who've actually served kava and kratom to real people and have seen how it really affects people and how it really brings communities together, right? So very few people have that prereq. If I only hired people who worked at kava bars, it would take me years to fill a kava bar, right? Because we're just not at the point where everybody's been a barista before they went to college, right? Like we're just not there in society and culture yet. So that's why I take the stance that I can teach those things. And even if you can't teach those things as a business owner, I have the resources for you. I'm developing them for that. But what you cannot develop quickly is hospitality. Hospitality is a very like, let's put it this way. So my very first job, no, well, my first job, I counted bugs on a research farm, but that was only in the summer. My first like real job that I held was at Fazoli's. So I worked in the hospitality industry my whole life essentially. And I the thing about it is, even though I started when I was 17, my mom was a waitress, and my mom and dad fell in love when my dad went to my mom. Like, my dad was a regular at my mom's like restaurant that she waitressed at. And then, growing up, like my mom, like she stayed at home a little bit for like a few years. So she was always doing all these serving things. So I just wanted to be like my mom. So I've been literally like, I feel like I've been studying hospitality my whole life. Like from the womb, I'd always be in the kitchen with my mom, and I'd always like try to help her serve the dishes and all the things. So when I got into that like Fazoli's environment, I instantly moved up in management and was instantly able to help the company. Meanwhile, I had my best friend hired with me, right? And she'd never, like, that's not the family style she grew up in. And she was a quick learner though, so she was able to learn, but it took her 6 additional months. 6 months to hit the same like markers I was at Fazoli's. That's that's a normal amount of time for people who don't have experience, right? But for you small business owners, 6 months with a small staff is kind of a long time. And you don't have, like, there's only so many slow shifts, right? Like, you need to have strong people for your nights and weekends, and or whatever, whenever your busy shifts are, but typically that's it. So all that being said, please really consider uh valuing hospitality above all else when it comes to hiring for your kava tenders. Those kava tenders are going to be very quick to pick up things. They're already in that mindset, but then also after after that point, it's easier for them to pop into management and grow. These are the career-minded people, right? Those who are coming in who don't have experience, they might be career people. You never know. This could just be their very first like step in the door, and they're like, "Oh man, like I want to learn the things." Okay, cool. I wouldn't put them as kava tender then. I would. So I personally, and you'll learn more about this in the build accountable crews thing, but I don't believe in the normal structure of like um how most service industry kind of sets up their employment. They typically go like, you have your service staff, and then you have like your mid managers, and then you have like maybe an assistant manager and a general manager. I think it's garbage. I think it's garbage. I hate it. And it doesn't allow for work-life balance for anybody. The GM will basically live at the kava bar as a slave, literally working like under minimum wage in order to like get all of their job tasks done. I'm sure many of the business owners who are watching this already are like, amen, I understand that feeling. Constantly not being able to clock out right away, right? So how do you build a business that can eventually have that structure to where you only have to work maybe 20 hours a week, or maybe you're never even in the bar because you shouldn't be in your own bar that much. Go watch Bar Rescue, learn more from John Taffer as to why too. I'm happy to go into that. But like, that's one of the things he repeats over and over again. Like, you should not be a regular at your own establishment, right? Like, you need to be able to create space for people to come in. And yes, you're working on it, but you can't always be there. You as an owner, if you are in your business all the time, you will sabotage your business. People will see your work truck outside of the establishment and turn around and be like, I'm not going to go there. Why? Because owners have a lot of different things going on than everyone else in the company. So those stressy vibes don't feel good in the kava bar environment. So I give this whole big like explanation because I just really want you to see how, don't just hire your friends that don't have experience. Like, it will literally turn you into the premier kava bar of your area, of your state, if you have legitimate like mixologists, people who legitimately think that this is their career and want to embody that. So yeah, make sure they have bartender experience. I will say bartender is better than barista, just because it's a different style. Like barista, you ring in the order and then that's it. But bartender style, you've had tabs. You're kind of multitasking more. Barista is the junior version of a bartender, in my opinion. That might be a hot take on the industry. I don't know if I just ruffled some feathers there, but that's how I feel, at least in my experience, both having worked as a barista, as a bartender, as a manager, as a chief of operations, and now where I'm at, like that's kind of where I'm coming from now. Okay, I will stop on that one for now. If there are any additional questions on that topic, though, feel free to put them in the chat. I did see another question come in here, so I'm going to read it out loud. It says, I have a couple questions I wrote down. I'll start writing them out. First one, I see a lot more kratom powder than tea leaves on the market. Is that just for convenience, or is it better for some reason? Great question. It took me years to find an answer for this, and I actually only like in the past like couple months have really like learned a lot about this. So, okay. I was always ordering powder for the entire time that I was running a Kava bar. And to my understanding, the distributor that we had gotten kratom powder from was a middleman, right, who imported it and processed it. When you turn it into a powder, so that process of taking leaf to powder, that is technically manufacturing. Even if it's done on the farm, like in Indonesia, or it's done in a food kitchen in the United States, the act of turning it from a leaf to a powder is a manufacturing process. Now, different different countries have different requirements when it comes to the manufacturing process. So, one thing I want to note here, in New Zealand, it is illegal to consume kava or like sell it as like a kava bar. So there's no kava bars in New Zealand, even though there's kava in New Zealand, right? But it is legal for them to sell it. It's legal for them like as a manufacturer, as a wholesale. So there's one kava company called Wakanavu. They are half New Zealand, half Fiji. And so their farms are in Fiji and the business is set up in New Zealand. But see how like, boom, they can't sell to anyone in their own country. They have to sell outside. So I know we're talking about kratom here, but I wanted to give that example because that's an example that I verified. Whereas a lot of these kratom farms, do you know that this is the weirdest thing, right? I've gotten on the phone with multiple kava distributors. I'm talking to humans, even if we have like completely different accents or completely different time zones, and it takes us a minute to get our Zoom calendars straight. I still always see them. I still talk to them all the things, right? Kratom industry is sketch, you guys. No one has talked to me in the kratom industry the way that multiple kava distributors have. And so unfortunately, that means that I have to learn things through not a direct approach, but more of like gathering data and filling in the gaps. And so that being said, I'm going to give you some information that I haven't been able to verify, but this is just kind of my thinking right now. So when it comes to that manufacturing process, I think it's cheaper and easier to manufacture it outside of the United States, because if we're talking about shipping, if you ship leaves versus shipping powder, which one do you think is more shelf stable? Like which one is less likely to mold? Which is the easiest to get across the border? The moment something is a leaf versus a powder, how does that complicate the what's the word I'm looking for? What is that process called? I'm blanking. I need more of my caffeine. So when the Department of Agriculture, like if you fly in from anywhere, even if you fly in from Hawaii, because they're islands, right? You typically, if you have any food like cheese or like anything, like you have to say, hey, I have this like cheese, right? Like I have this bread, I have this whatever I'm bringing from this other country, right? But if it's in a package, it's a different rule than if it was raw. So if you're trying to bring a raw fruit back, usually they'll literally make you throw that fruit away. Like usually the Department of Agriculture isn't going to let you bring that fruit in. But if you had a fruit candy that was like highly processed in this thing that has like a label and all this stuff on it, yeah, they're way more likely to just leave it alone and leave it in your suitcase. But they're going to grab that fruit, right? So let's go back to the powder and the leaf example. I think since powders are processed, packaged, dry, put in this vacuum sealed container, and then sent, those typically aren't messed with as much as leaves in that process. So that's one part about like just contextually speaking how like why I think kratom distributors do what they do in terms of like how it gets in here. The downside to that is the moment you taste the kratom, if it tastes metallic in any way, shape, or form, you know that they were manufacturing in very likely third world country that doesn't have the same heavy metal protections that we do in the that we have here in the United States. So I've had a few bags of powdered kratom do that. I've also had a few bags of powdered kratom smell like gasoline. And I then found out it's because some of their machines are powered by gasoline. And then the fumes, again, because they're not GMP, they don't have GMP certifications over like the same way that they have here, right? So the fumes get kind of put into the powder in the process and it's gross. So point of this whole story is this is why you will never hear me be like, let me tell you exactly which brand of kratom, because it kind of like the market's so in flux right now that I personally would ask for a COA often, not just the first time I ever ordered for them, just be like, hey, just want to make sure like you're continually checking your batches, right? So all of that being said, I think that's the biggest reason. I think powder is just the easiest to import. I could have just said powders are easiest to import, but I think a lot of you guys here who enjoy my content really enjoy the detailed definitions and things. So that, because my point here is like I don't want you, like I want to empower you to with the methodology so that these questions, as you ask me them, eventually over time, you're gonna feel like you're gonna understand how I problem solve so that you can kind of get that mindset as well. Yeah. There was one other thing I wanted to say about the kratom. What was it? Unfortunately, kratom extracts are the easiest thing on the market to feel most comfortable with, just because when you process it with alcohol, it naturally kills a lot of stuff, right? Um, so when it comes to that, I do have kratom brands that I feel more comfortable saying, hey, I like this extract. So for example, there's a brand called Pure Infinity, and I think they're based out of Florida. I love their kratom extract. It makes me feel really great. I'm not an affiliate or anything. But they always had really high quality COAs too. I always really liked reading them. But I don't know. I'm going to tell you a horror story while we're on this topic about powders, and maybe it'll help you see why I'm so skeptical. So, way back in the day when I was just a wee kava tender, and I genuinely didn't think I was going to be consulting in the kava space because I had a different coaching business at the time, helping people with flow state and dancing and being like, how do you be like a professional artist? And so I was just I was a moonlighter kava tender for a second there and then I fell in love with kava tending instantly and, abandoned that other business. But point of that story is when I was just a kava tender, I wasn't in the decision-making like team yet. I always loved that I got free drinks on my shifts, right? And then the owner of the Kava Bar at one point was like, well, we need to take away shift drinks because there is an inventory issue. Well, the inventory issue at the time was the general manager at the time. Like it was like his fault because he wasn't doing his job. That's what happens when you hire a firefighter to be a general manager, by the way. Don't do that. Side note. That's why I had to jump into being GM. I was like, this all needs to make sense. Anyway, I digress. I'm digressing here. So our shift drinks got taken away and I got pissed. I was pissed as a kava tender because I was like, I get paid bartender wage. And yes, I make great tips, but like, how am I supposed to recommend products that I don't even get to try at my own workplace? Like, I'm not going to pay to sell your products. Like, you need to give me samples of your products. Like, that's how I've always felt. And so when those shift drinks were taken away, I was like, fine, I'll go get my own kratom and I'll put it in a mason jar and I'll bring my mason jar into work. And then when customers ask me why I'm not having my, or, oh, would you recommend the Kratom? I was such a jackass at the time. And I'd be like, well, I don't know, because my boss won't let me try it. So I'm drinking my own. I'm a little shit. That's why I can't have a boss sometimes. Anyway, point of this whole story is I was going down this trying this other kratom, and I am so sad to report that it was laced with something. It was mixed with something else. It was at a gas station, and I thought it was going to be safe because it was in these like capsule forms. This was years ago. This was before I learned a lot of things I know now about the industry. But my husband and I, we were making our own drinks, and then we started getting really irritable with each other. And this was when we were still dating, right? Like I don't even think we weren't even engaged at this time. And normally like as a couple we were great, and then out of nowhere we just like were like red hot anger for no reason. And then after that, because my husband was he's a former heroin addict, so his body is really, it like understands opioids a lot differently. And it's not that kratom's an opioid, it just tickles the opioid receptor in a similar way. So that's why it helps a lot of people who are in recovery without getting them like fucking high. So anyway, he started getting these crazy rashes, and he had this crazy withdrawal that he said was worse than his worst heroin withdrawal, guys. Like, and I got angry. I almost quit my job that day. Like, I almost quit my job, the industry, all of it, because I was like, this is stupid. This is supposed to be helping people. And luckily my husband has like an extremely strong mindset, and he's been sober for years. So it didn't turn him into any sort of spiral into like going and wanting to try other drugs, but it sure as hell spiraled his mental health, and therefore mine, because we're both drinking the kratom, but then I'm trying to help my husband, but also boyfriend at the time, but then also like trying to help my own mindset and trying to be like, well, I'm supposed to go to work and serve this to people. But again, it wasn't the same kratom. So do you see, first off, why I advocate so much for you need to give your staff a shift drink. Give them one shift drink every day so that they stay happy with your product and they sell your products. But number two, really safeguarding people. You want, like, you become a distributor. Like, you as a Kava Bar owner, oftentimes Kava bars are always asking me like, oh, can you give me like a list of suppliers or distributors? And I'm like, you are a distributor. So like, this is like, I'll teach you how to become a good distributor and a thoughtful distributor, but I can't just give you some magical list, right? So all of this being said, you got to check your sources, and you can't just check them once and then assume that it's going to be good forever. Like, you'll just want to make sure that, you know, every few months, every month, every time you get a shipment, depending on how your ordering schedule is, request a COA. Make sure they stay on top of that stuff, and make sure they don't just send you the same COA over and over again. There should be different dates, different timestamps, slightly different levels in each thing, because nothing is perfect, right? So if we're seeing the same number over and over and over again, like no one's that consistent. There's usually at least 1 part per million that changes a little bit. So if we're not seeing these changes over time, that's how we know we're dealing with a shady business person who's distributing kratom to us, right? So yeah, that was a random long tangent, but that story, I felt like it needed to be shared. Okay, do you think a profit sharing model could work in a kava bar? The pros are easier for me to imagine than possible cons. I love this. This is a really great question. And so I'm going to start by saying, yes, I think profit share models are always a great idea. Oh man, okay. I was debating in my head if I should tell you this like personal story. I'm going to, because you guys are the best. So, when I walked into again, like I said, I'm just this sassy person, right? But that's because I really protect my energy. And if I'm giving you my energy, like I know, like I spend hours and days and weeks and months and years working on the things that I do. So if I say, hey, I can help you, Like, I'm never going to waste your time in saying something like that. So, if I have devoted myself to helping you, like, best believe I think about you at 3 in the morning, and not in like a gross way, but like, how can I help your business? Like, how can I get this problem solved? What is this going on? Like, so when I entered that Kava bar, there was a sticky note on the bar and it said, "This is your bar. Like, if this is your shift, like, you own it. Like, take charge of it. This is your home. This is your living room. People are entering your home and you are the host." And I took that so freaking seriously, especially because, like I said, that was when I owned my other coaching business, Functional Flow Academy, at the time before it became an app. And um, when I started taking that ownership mentality, that's again why I abandoned that business, because I was so falling in love with this industry. And then the owner of the Kava bar at the time told me, hey, because I was working so hard and I wanted to make things better and I was innovating things and I was creating these new things that had never been done before in the industry. I turned this mom and pop into an entire Kava bar like chain. Like, I turned them into a franchisable model. I created their systems. Everything I teach here, I like did for them, right? And it was told to me in multiple contexts, also in an email, also like I have like all these paper trails where I was promised part ownership of the company. So because of that, like in lieu of a pay raise. So it was more of like, instead of the pay raise, whatever money I would have gotten in that raise, I'm going to actually just reinvest that into the company. And then that was supposed to be my equity share. That and this model of building more ownership over time. Now, mind you, because I was told that, and because I've been literally interviewed in multiple newspapers, I can send the link. The links are all in my website as well. I've been interviewed in Phoenix papers that even say I am the business partner. I was taking all of these initiatives. I was taking all these responsibilities and doing it. And then after a year of that, and after literally being so exhausted that I didn't even get a haircut for my own wedding. Like, I didn't even I I don't know what to say other than like, we put our whole heart and soul into it. And then there was one night we stayed up over 24 hours because we were moving to a new location and we had a health inspection at 11 a.m. the next day. So literally stayed up to the point where we were so crazy and so exhausted, but it was just all a labor of love. After that point, it became very clear that it was a not like, that was just something that was just a sticky note that was put on the bar. Those were lies that were told to get the most amount of work out of me with the cheapest price, essentially. That's why I'm a consultant now and I'll never get back to working for people in any other context. But I just want to tell you that whole story because I literally, like, this guy told me I was the most important person in his life, like this person who was supposed to be my business partner, right? And would say all of these things and act like, oh yeah, you're gonna be owner, like, oh, this is like a thing, right? And then to just take it away, it literally ruined his business. Within 1 month of me leaving, the rest of the staff walked out and they had to shut down their second location. And so that's what happens when you have a really good idea and you talk about it, but then you don't do anything about it. So I only say that because, Louis, I know you're a good person, and I think that this is a really great model. I think you need to get the details of it together before you tell anybody about it. And then once you do, make sure it's in paper. Make sure it's like written out, like, hey, um, you know, as an employee, if like however you choose to structure like a profit sharing model, just make sure it's written out very clearly for everyone to understand. And if there are any updates that need to be made to that, that's okay. Just make sure that there's a meeting where everyone can talk about it. It's not like, oh, you just update it, send an email and remain unavailable and then leave the country for a week. Like, because that happened too. So just make sure you're just being very clear with your communication on it. And then it could absolutely be an amazing idea. And honestly, like, you healed my heart a little bit asking that question, because I think, you know, I think that the Kava community, the more people, like there's a lot of people who want this to be their career, and there are a lot of people who are gonna want to work with you long term. But let's say, you have an amazing Kava tender named Amy, and Amy is wonderful, and she is your right-hand girl in your shop. But then, Amy finds a person and she gets married, and maybe they start a family, and now they need to make more money because Amy's not just taking care of herself anymore. So how can your Kava bar grow with Amy so that you keep her expertise with the company, so that you don't lose Amy the way that the last Kava bar lost me? Like, how do you ensure that? By just making sure that you are like very like make sure that any idea that you have like this, don't talk about it with staff. This is the difference between ownership and non-ownership. Don't talk about anything with any employee or someone you give a W-2 with until you've finalized it in the legal sense. So you can talk about it with like, in this kind of space with me, right? But it could kill morale of people. This is the part about business entrepreneurship in general that like always makes me feel like empathy for the business owners that appear to be narcissistic, because sometimes business owners have to make decisions that employees just will never understand. And if you've only ever worked a corporate job and you've never been an entrepreneur, you'll never understand what it's like what the business owners have to go through, right? So let's say you have this really awesome idea, but then you're like, oh shit, it turns out that we as a company can't afford to put that into place for like 2.5 more years. Okay, well, in that case, keep that secret to yourself until you can make it happen. Don't be telling people, oh, my goal is to make this happen. Because what's going to happen is this: oh shit, out of nowhere, another COVID happens. Or, oh my God, your POS system, you have to get a whole new POS because your credit card processor accidentally dropped you for some reason. That's going to cost 10 grand, 20 grand to put together a whole new system. And then to launch it, then the staff trainings on top of that, it could be even 30 grand. So now what you thought, okay, well, it cost me 30 grand to make this program, to put all the legal papers together, and have the people actually structure the things you want it to, that 30 grand might be accidentally taken for something else. So the point of the story is, don't tell your W-2 people until it's a reality, just because it could absolutely backfire on you, and in a negative direction, not even a neutral, but a negative because of morale. But yes, I think it's an amazing idea. I just wanted to tell that story because like I'm still healing from it. Like that happened to me around Christmas time. And like I'm still like, it's May, like I still haven't even been back there. I'm working on it. I'm being so vulnerable with you guys right now. It's ridiculous. Okay. Multi-part question. What are your thoughts on kava extract powder? If you like it, when/how do you typically see it used? Or personally, what are your thoughts on kava shots? Oh, yes, I love these questions. I love kava shots. First off, I'm going to say that right now. I love them, especially as a kava. Like that's the way that I prefer to drink kava. I like a 2-ounce serving of like a concentrated kava. Boom. And that's because, remember, kava has a reverse tolerance effect. So some people, if they just started drinking kava, they're probably going to need to have a few shells. I wouldn't recommend a shot to a new person, especially because they're going to be like, ugh, that's dirt water. They're not going to like it, right? But kava shots are great for people who have been drinking kava, have that reverse tolerance built up, like me. And anybody who just wants to do like a little bula, like, yeah. So I'm a big fan of kava shots. I think everybody should have kava shots in their bars. Okay, now how to make them extract or different way. So I would offer both varieties. So I would do a concentrated kava. So like if you have your normal brewing ratio where let's say it's like 1 gram per ounce, right? For your normal kava shells. Well, I would also brew another bucket that was like 2 grams per ounce, so that a 2-ounce shot glass is like a 4-ounce shell essentially. And then so you still feel it. It feels real good, but it's efficient. It's a shot. It gets right down. And honestly, I feel comfortable. And remember, I'm a sensitive person. I don't need a lot of kava. But if I got carried away and took 5 of those concentrated kava shots, I'd be okay the next day. I'd be fine. Like I'd live to tell the tale. I would have had enough water. with the kava for it to be a good experience. And when you take it in that concentrated form, it kind of makes you a little bit thirsty. So it promotes the drinking of water. So concentrated kava brewed in the traditional way as a shot, it's awesome. We used to call them Bula Bombs. And then when it comes to extract, I think that extract shots are great. I used to make like a little chocolate milk one. I used to love just like a little cacao and some coconut milk. And I'll be honest with you, I put a little sugar in there, little bit of the vanilla sweetener because I like sugar. And and then I would put kava extract in there. Why would I do that? Because okay, this is just one of them very detailed moments I'm about to tell you. If you drink kava behind the bar without drinking enough water, like the tea version of it can dehydrate you. And because it's a pepper plant, because it's capsaicin, just imagine how that might feel if you're a kava tender and you're like, oh, I'm too busy to go to the bathroom, but I can't go to the bathroom because the customers are in there and I got 10 drink orders. So I'm like holding going to the, it has made people think that they had UTIs is the point of the story. And then they thought that they had to go to the hospital. Then they get home, they drink water and they're like, oh, I'm fine. Kava just gave me this like fake little UTI feeling for a second. So I only mention that because that's the reason that I like kava extract shots, actually. Like, so if I was behind the bar, I would take a kava extract shot because it was much easier for me to, because I would put it in like, or well, I would do that and then I'd be drinking like my like hydrating drink on the side. It was just less for my body to process in a certain way. So point of that story is I don't vilify kava extract shots. I do vilify kava extract shots that are made out of alcohol. I think that's stupid because kava and alcohol don't mix naturally. So what's the best one to get? Well, Calm with Kava has a nano kava extract. So it's made out of like a CO2 process instead of alcohol. So I highly recommend that one. Yeah, at this point, I'm not even an official like affiliate of Calm with Kava at this point. I just love their product so much. I'm working on it, let's be real. But yeah, so I do like that kava extract. I think there's nothing wrong with putting that on the menu. Now, if someone's only drinking kava extract, I would have a conversation with that regular and be like, homie, try the other one. Try a traditional shell. But usually that's not the problem because people who like kava a lot, they're gonna have kava shells. People who want the kava extract usually just want to add it to their kratom drink or something else. And in that case, why not? Because kava and kratom mix really well. I love when they're together personally. May not be up for everyone, but it is for me. Now, the last part of your question, I'm answering it in the backwards order, sorry, but you mentioned kava extract powder. So I think what you're talking about is, oh, what did I refer to? Micronized, right? Well, okay. So there's like 3 different kinds of kava. You can have the traditional, like it is finely crushed, but it needs to be like massaged in the bag, right? So that's just like your fine kava powder. Then you have the kava powder that is instant, right? Instant kava powder is not the same as the other one. The other one is or so the instant powder is just this one brewed and then dried. So it is safer to consume that powder. Like it's okay. Um, here's my caveat here. In my opinion, I think it's best to sell kava extract powder as a retail item, not as a behind the bar type thing, because people come to kava bars because they want someone to brew it, honestly. Like they want it made deliciously perfectly. Like Tyler and I have taught Tyler's parents how to make kratom 1 million times, but do you know they never make it unless we're in town? And then when we're in town, they're like, can you just maybe make it for us, please, maybe? And so we're like, of course, we got you. So point of that story is even if people know how like to brew it and we teach them and all the things, like they just want it to be done for them because they want to be taken care of. And there's something to be said about like when you are a professional, you do kind of take for granted how good you are at doing things. So people are just like, ah, it just doesn't taste as good as when you do it. And it's sweet and it's awesome. The point of that story is that just goes to show that's why people come to your bar instead of constantly consuming products at home. So I would make, that's why I'm like, sell and make the best in your store. And then I'm not saying that that other powder isn't good. It's great for people who don't know how to brew or who don't feel comfortable being mixologists at home. They just want something quick they can put in water. It's a great retail product. But you are a bar. You are, you know, you don't need to take that route. And the last thing I'll say about that is there is one bar I went to in Vegas and Kava Bar, and they literally they're like, oh, well, we make the strongest drinks. That should be a cool upsell factor, right? Wrong. They were making people feel terrible. So the difference between noble kava and tutti kava, right? Noble is what we all drink and know and love, and that's what all of the kava forums in the United States say. They're like, only drink noble varieties. Tutti, in a rough translation, means 2 day because it's so sedative, it's so potent that it makes you kind of fucked up for like 2 days straight, to be honest. And that has a purpose. Like, even though that is very sedative and not like super sober, right? And it does have a hangover, so that's not fun. Why the hell would anyone want tutti kava? Because tutti kava is what you drink when people die. So like when there's like a death in the family or you're grieving something, a death of a season, a death of like something terrible happened where you're having a really hard time coping, they traditionally drink tutti kava for a small amount of time until their body has calmed down enough to allow them to think through what's next. And then they switch back to the noble varieties. So, point of that whole story is if you use a lot of noble kava in a high amount, it actually feels like tutti and it actually gives you a hangover. So the kava bar I went to in Vegas that did that to me, like they swear, like we're not friends. They don't like me because they didn't know how to answer my questions. But I was like, are you sure this is noble kava? Because I'm like, I would take it multiple times. Like I went there multiple times over the course of months because I really wanted to like them because they were like the only place in Vegas. And they were like, no, it's definitely noble. And I found out what they were doing was they were using the kava extract powder in a high amount, and it was so high that it made everyone feel drugged. And it's terrible because they were very specifically targeting the AA crowd, like with their marketing. So I'm like, cool, you just like caused some people to relapse. Nice, good job. So that's my biggest takeaway from using kava extract powder. So to summarize that, it's great retail product. I still drink that powder. I think it's wonderful. Again, when I'm on the road, like right now, for those of you who know, like my normal environment, like I'm staying in Phoenix right now. So I'm actually in one of my parents-in-law. The in-laws have this like extra place, right? So that means that I don't have my normal setup. So if I'm in this situation, I always carry around this like ridiculously large bag that has, you know, holds my laptop and all the things. And I'll usually put like instants or little extracts in there. So some people carry like Tabasco sauce, you know, and like to put on things. Here I am with like herbal things. But point of that story is that's what that's good for. I would never rely on it for your service itself, though. All right. Thank you guys so much. This was such a great Q&A session. We got through so many things. Like I mentioned at the top of this, if you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email, hello@marinamars.com. I do host these Q&A sessions once a month, free, open to the public. Anyone can come to them. Other than that, I do have other things coming up. So now that you're, you know, participating in this, you're automatically on my email list, so you'll hear about them. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And to the Bula Bosses in here, I'll see you in a minute. But everyone else, catch you some other time.